Form up!
This unit skill
Get
is
into
on
position! Units, assemble! Form up! Attack!
Our team's tactical day.
Form up! Form up!
Alright, I got my tea. Pros: extorting peasants, a siege system that makes For Honor look like a friendly skirmish, and fully automatic muskets. Cons: collision detection that regularly breaks the laws of physics, bugs that are more persistent than hungry ants, and the North American server being run on what feels like an iPod Nano, the old kind. Anyway, I'm the Happy Tao, and welcome to the Conquerors Blade review. In 2014, Booming Games started pushing out mobile titles faster than people could lose their money on them. However, as slot machines started giving way to increasingly bad financial decisions regarding virtual tanks, Booming Games decided to work on their own freemium MMO. Released in 2019, Conquerors Blade aimed to provide players with hyper-stylized medieval warfare and an accurate simulation of suppressing the rebels. Just like the homeland. However, before I move on to the rest of the review, there's something we gotta take care of. You see, Booming Games only published Conquerors Blade in South America and Central Asia. The publishing rights for North America and EU went to My.games, and I'm conflicted on them. Firstly, there's a lot of talk about My.games customer service being a sack of shit, but I can't really justify this considering that they actually did end up helping a lot of players with missing items during last season. That being said, their hardware is another story entirely. For some godforsaken reason known only to Satan and Dick Cheney, My.games decided that the best choice to run their massively multiplayer online game that had access to the entire North American continent would be a single $90 server, which I can only assume is powered by a large collection of hamsters. Because of this, you're going to run into a ton of bugs on the NA server that popped up a long time ago and they never really got around to fixing. These can be really annoying, but if you want a more polished experience, there's still hope. If you don't mind playing in another region, you can jump on the South American or Central Asian servers run by Booming Games themselves. The graphics look great, the hit detection, well, exists, and there's multiple little quality of life improvements here and there. For example, I don't know if it's just me, but when I give unit commands on the North American server, I don't hear any response back. On the South American server, not only do I hear a response, but I hear it in the native language of the troop that I've chosen.
After me!
Holy shit, I might just actually learn some Mandarin. However, nothing good comes free, and this is no exception. You're going to have to make a choice. You can play on the South American server and have great ping but terrible player count, or you can play on the Central Asian server and have terrible ping but China's player count. You can also stay on the North American server and have great ping and great player count, but you're going to have to deal with My.games running the whole thing on a fucking toaster oven. The choice is up to you, and I'm going to be using footage from both the South American and the North American version in this video. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let me mention the fun part of the review. I reached out to a prominent Conquerors Blade YouTuber by the name of Evo Loz Gaming, and for some reason, probably having to do with the fact that this guy is really fucking nice, he agreed to do an interview. And just so you know that I didn't just go and grab my brother and tell him to do his best British male impression, here's Evo Loz and how he got into Conquerors Blade in the first place.
Yeah, so I originally started my channel and got into the whole YouTube thing playing a game called Total War Arena, which was like a spin-off of the Total War franchise. And then that ended up closing down towards the end of 2018 as a game, and I was sort of left a bit stranded, a bit unsure where I wanted to go. And I was kind of looking around for sort of similar things or sort of fairly medievally sort of fighting sort of things. And a few people from the community from that game sort of recommended to check out this closed beta testing for this game called Conquerors Blade, which hadn't been released at the time, but yeah, was still in the testing phases. So I did. I went and had a look. Got stuck into some of the siege tests. They were only testing the battles, you know, sort of all set battles, and I really enjoyed it.
And so did I, because, well, shit, here we are. Now, let's get to talking about this game, shall we? So I'm going to be real with you here. Conquerors Blade's story has a bad case of not existing, and I felt there should be a bit of pretext to explain why you and every other heavily armored shonen protagonist are running around engaged in an eternal dick measuring contest. To that end, I have pieced together what scraps I could find in terms of Conquerors Blade's plot and, filled in the rest. There are 4 nations: Osteria, Ungvaria, Maoyang, and Liangyong. For a while, they all got along because of their shared interest in treating peasants like shit. This all ends, however, when some dude named Valen comes along and tells the peasants, hey, why die of hunger when you can die for me? Apparently it doesn't take much convincing because nearly every single fucking province of every single fucking nation sprouted bands of roving ex-taxpayers who've made a habit of demanding their money back. It doesn't end very well. However, the unrest has led to the 4 nations realizing that without terrorizing the populace, they have nothing in common. Miraculously, they managed to set their differences aside. No, I'm sorry, I can't keep a straight face. They start killing each other. Welcome to Conquerors Blade. Once you're done deciding which server you're going to play on, one of the first things you'll notice is how good this game looks. I mean, Jesus, even the My.games version is flexing on Skyrim. However, some things are a bit out of place. That being said, this game looks beautiful, even though My.games server is probably begging for the sweet relief of death. So let's call it a good and move on to sound. It's not going to win any Grammys, but it's good. There isn't an audio effect in here that feels out of place. Hell, even the muskets sound pretty reasonable, unless you're Janissaries, in which case... I think the music is good, but then again, anything can get stuck in your head if the same song plays over and over for 24 hours straight in Ungvaria. Please. Add different ambient music tracks for the love of God. Finally, that takes us to the requirements, and this is going to be one of those titles that eats your RAM for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then ransacks your neighbor's computer for late night snacking. Anyway, that's all I have to say on the presentation. It's pretty good. Now let's move on to gameplay. Okay, so when you start the game, you're dropped into a training field as a new prospect for the army. It is here that you will have your very first selection of shiny death stick, which are a lot of damage, a weeaboo's wet dream, a sword and shield, a bigger sword and shield, a Legolas simulator, a discount Legolas simulator, a pointy boy, peacekeeper on crack, pure, unrestricted big dick energy, and my favorite weapons, the glaive, because who needs a horse when you can be the horse?
Get your ass back here! Hell no!
And the musket, which gives you no unit clear, no health, and no friends, but all of the damage. This is because of 2 things. 1, the ability called 5 rounds rapid, which turns your medieval era arquebus into a fucking machine gun. The second thing that allows musket players to turn into virtual gods of war is the attribute system. Strength is, well, kinda self-explanatory. Agility actually does not affect speed, but your piercing damage. Armor turns enemy bullets into nerf darts, and toughness just makes your health bar thick as fuck. And you're gonna want that beefy health bar because you're not just fighting heroes. Oh no. You're facing an army. You see, Conquerors Blade allows each player in a match to command a single unit of rank and file soldiers at a time, and if you think they don't matter, you will be quickly disproved by a single line of muskets one-shotting your ass, shield walls that are sturdier than the actual walls, and these fucking assholes. These are the Condottieri Guard, and they specialize in clapping your ass. Not only do they get a crazy powerful charge, they also have an ability that introduces their shield into your face, stun-locking you and everything you love into a fine powder, and then dabbing on your corpse as they sprint away. Seriously, watch your backline in this game. You can unlock most units on a unit tree for a resource called Honor, however some units are anything but. The lower tier units you can unlock pretty fast, however the game can get really grindy with some units costing up in the tens of thousands of Honor to unlock. That's okay, because the battles in this game are fucking fantastic. Essentially, you can choose between 3 different types, 2 of them that actually matter. Field battles, which are an excuse to watch heavily armored horses beat the shit out of anything that doesn't have a long pointy stick, and siege battles, which, well, you've got to see this.
The gate has been destroyed.
This is fine. That's okay.
Things are gonna be okay.
Siege battles are a fucking jam. Think For Honor, but you can actually control your army. In these matches, you can build artillery, scale the walls with siege towers, and if you really need to get across the size of your middle finger to the enemy team, you can trebuchet their ass. That being said, you should be kinda careful with the heavy artillery because it can have some creative trajectories. I'm gonna hit the right side. Wait, what? What?
The left
What?
siege tower has reached the
You
wall.
killed his entire unit.
What? And there's a lot of ways to get into these battles too. You can either hit the big J button on your keyboard and queue one up, or you can engage in territory wars because, folks, this game has an open world. I'm still surprised at seeing this in the game. The open world allows you to collect resources, scavenge for supplies, and extort peasants. I'm not even kidding. The open world also plays host to the territory war system, which allows you to get a bunch of your similarly war-thirsty friends together and take control of a town through creative diplomacy. However, in my humble opinion, the best way to play this game is the instant siege battles. They limit the quality of the units you can bring to them, so if that means someone has a unit of Iron Reapers, while they do have one kick-ass unit, all it takes is one treb and they'll be stuck with Pike Militia and Volunteers for the rest of the game. Don't just take my word on the siege battles and the fantastic combat system though, because Evo weighed in on this one too.
I think it probably is the combat in a broad sense, and it's the sort of instant siege battles you can do. I think that's what draws a lot of people back in day after day. I think that's, even after a year of playing this and God knows how many hours of playing this game, it's still, when I log in, it's still that first siege battle that sort of gets me excited more than anything. And I think it's that replayability of those sieges that they just don't seem to get old. And every day, I still get that desire to log in and play, even if I have a day off, sort of thinking, I get excited and ready to log back in again. So I think it's the combat system and sort of how that integrates into these 15v15 PvP matches. They're very competitive and just very enjoyable. I think that's what the whole game is built on.
So yeah, the gameplay is fantastic, and the combat system and the siege battles are the premier reasons you should actually pick this game up, which brings us to the next and final body section, the community. Alright, so the community in Conquerors Blade is a double-edged sword. On one hand, the community is incredibly helpful to newer players, well, most of the time. I asked Evo about the community in regards to new players too.
Yeah, I think, generally speaking, Conquerors Blade has a pretty decent community that's largely very helpful for new players. As you say, there is an awful lot to take in at the start, and it does take a bit of time to sort of get used to that. There's a lot of sort of houses that are set up. The game sort of lends itself to the in-game clans, which are called houses. So naturally, that's where a lot of people tend to drift to. And then obviously when new players find houses, there tends to be people in those houses to particularly assist them, teach them the ropes, get them going, get them set up, sort of points them in the direction of what units they should be leveling, etc. So I think that does a lot for fostering the community on newer players. But then, also there's generally a very positive attitude over on things like there's official Discord and stuff. There's help channels over there. When people post, there's always a response and some advice pointing people sort of right in the right sort of direction. So yeah, I think generally speaking, that the community is very helpful towards new players. And kind of does quite a lot to get them settled into the game.
So yeah, the Conquerors Blade community is pretty great to new players. However, I did say this was a double-edged sword, and it's time to turn the blade over, because as soon as you decide to join a new house or create one, you're going to be introduced to a whole new side of the game. To be fair, this side does include badass siege battles, creating your own artillery, and fighting for a big ol' city on a hill. However, it also includes deep inter-alliance politicking, grudges that have been around since the Stone Ages, and honest-to-God spies sent from other factions into your own to discover all your secrets. Hell, even the player market is a PvP battlefield, and if this sounds familiar, it's because it does. It's Eve, with horses. That's not to say that it's a bad group of people. The folks I met while playing the game were delightful and an absolute blast to hang out with. That being said, I can't recommend getting too serious about territory wars unless you really want to dedicate months of time into the game. It's a whole rabbit hole, and I guess it's just not my cup of tea. That being said, most of the houses in the game are incredibly welcoming to new players and they'll help you out. At the end of the day, if you don't want to spend eons in the Game of Thrones-esque landscape of the metagame, you don't have to. The siege battles are plenty of fun and still a reason to play the game. Anyway, I've said all that I really need to say, and this was supposed to be a short video. So yeah, we're gonna wrap up. Conquerors Blade is one of the most enjoyable free-to-play games I have experienced in the better part of a year. It combines combat that makes me feel like the protagonists of Castlevania and unit command gameplay for a taste of RTS, and the two come together to create an experience that is fast-paced and exciting as fuck. And again, it's technically free, although there are a lot of ways to blow your money on this game. I would know, I blew a lot. But my point is that you can go install this game right now and start learning the joys of watching your musket put out fire relative to a World War II Garand rifle. I give this game the final score of watching a heavily armed unit of spear sergeants beat the shit out of a bunch of peasants. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got an ability to go play with.